The great dream demon lord suddenly roused his aura, and a torrent of sound rolled forth. My ancient demon realm is willing to offer 10 merit divine beads that can break through to the human sage realm in exchange for the Truce Monument. As soon as these words were spoken, the other sages present immediately showed difficult expressions. Though each harbored their own bargaining chips, they were still deeply shocked by the great dream demon lord's opulent offer. Right then, more than half of the sages felt their hearts sink, and secretly began to retreat. Fang Chen's gaze suddenly sharpened. Even with his composure, a surge of heat rose in his heart. He rapidly calculated in his mind. Before the great war of the ancient giants, apart from the Grand Libationer, there were only a handful of sages in the entire Central Earth. Yet now, a mere truce monument could be traded for 10 sages. The strength of Central Earth sages would experience an epic surge. He forcibly suppressed his surging excitement, his gaze burning as he looked toward the other sages and asked in a clear voice, "And what of the rest of you?" From the crowd, a young female sage who had remained silent all along suddenly spoke in a detached tone. "The arsenal is willing to exchange 12 merit divine beads that break rough the sage realm for the Truce Monument." When this price was announced, the eyebrows of all sages present twitched, a trace of unconcealable surprise flashing in their eyes. The great dream demon lord's pupils contracted slightly. He stared intently at her and said in a deep voice, "The arsenal has actually sent someone as well. May I ask your esteemed name?" That young female sage, who was merely at the One Calamity realm, showed not a trace of timidity before the great dream demon lord. She spoke her name neither humbly nor arrogantly. "This one is Jian Qingmei." The great dream demon lord's expression drastically changed, and he murmured, "Your surname is Jian." A struggle flashed in his eyes for a moment, then he decisively waved his hand and declared in a deep voice, "I withdraw from the contest." Fang Chen's heart was filled with shock and uncertainty, and he immediately cast his gaze toward that female sage from Arsenal. Just what background did this woman have to make even someone as arrogant as the great dream demon lord directly abandon the fight? She appeared unremarkable in looks, around 25 or 26, about the same age as Yun Shang. But the most striking thing was her eyes. Her pupils were actually 2 sharp sword shapes. Slanted across her back was an ancient sword covered in rust. At first glance, she seemed no different from an ordinary sage, yet if one observed carefully, they would discover that her entire body lacked any trace of life aura whatsoever. Fang Chen muttered to himself, could she be, like the poison body, a puppet remotely controlled by someone? Jian Qingmei's sword, shaped pupils slowly swept across the surroundings, her tone flat. Is there anyone else who wishes to contend? At that moment, a young sage fully shrouded in a black robe, his face hidden in shadow, let out a faint sneer. Does Arsenal think it's so impressive? This truce monument, Nanqian will take it. The moment the name Nanqian fell, the expressions of all present sages instantly changed dramatically. A few representatives from worlds that had still been considering a bid silently stepped back and resolutely withdrew from the contention. The great dream demon lord's pupils trembled violently, and he lost his voice. What? Even Nanqian has come. As his voice faded, a massive wave surged in his heart. Both Arsenal and Nanqian were supermassive worlds with foundations so terrifying they could directly confront the ancient dark creature's head on. Why were they fighting over a truce monument? Jian Qingmei's gaze instantly sharpened like a sword, and she directed a cold stare. HMPH, however many merit divine beads Nanqian offers, Arsenal will forever add one more. The black-robed youth laughed softly upon hearing this, his voice drawn out leisurely, carrying an air of lofty condescension. Does something my Nanqian has set its eyes upon still need to be contested? He turned around, clasped his hands behind his back, and addressed Fang Chen in a tone that sounded like a bestowed favor. Little junior of Central Earth, present the Truce Monument, and he, this lord, shall award you a single merit divine bead. Fang Chen raised an eyebrow, a trace of coldness flashing through his eyes. It had been a long time since anyone dared to act so arrogantly in front of him. Before the assembly of Central Earth sages, this man actually dared to be so insolent. No matter his origins, to try to take the Truce Monument with a single merit divine bead, as if shooing away a beggar was sheer delusion. Fang Chen's face devoid of expression, he coldly spat 3 words, can't afford it, turn right when you leave, don't disturb my business. The black-robed youth let out a string of long, chuckling laughs, his face still hidden in shadow but clearly bearing undisguised arrogance. His tone suddenly turned icy. You seem to have some misunderstanding about my Nanqian. Vast as the myriad worlds and 100 realms are, all land belongs to the king. Every spirit in your realm is a subject of the king. For this lord to take a thing from a commoner like you, is a favor bestowed upon you. Huh? Fang Chen laughed out of sheer rage. This tone practically transported him back to the era of mortal dynasties in a dream. Yet when he swept his gaze across the surroundings, whether they were sages from beyond the heavens or heroes of Central Earth, not a single one laughed. Rather, every face was utterly grim. Within the Central Earth realm, 9 Grand Libationers crossed the void in unison and stood shoulder to shoulder before that black-robed man. The Grand Libationer of Taking Great Prefecture flicked his horsetail whisk, his expression detached and enunciated word by word. The era of Great Cayenne has long passed. You need not continue dreaming that 10,000-year-old dream. This place is the Central Earth founded by the Yunhuang ancient saint, and Nanqian is not welcome here. The other 8 Grand Libationers silently stirred their auras. In an instant, 9 overwhelming presences merged into one, condensing into a supreme aura comparable to the 3 calamities realm. The black-robed youth still stood with his hands behind his back, arrogantly fearless. The world, long divided, must unite. The reunification under Great Cayenne is the mandate of he. Avon, you petty rebels occupying the territory of the Great Cayenne Kingdom, will ultimately be crushed one by my Great Cayenne. Surrender now, and you may yet avoid the crime of world annihilation. As his words fell, his icy gaze pierced straight at Fang Chen, his tone sinister. This lord says it one last time, hand over the Truce Monument. Do not make this lord unhappy. Fang Chen coldly glanced at him, then turned to Jian Qingmei and said in a deep voice, the Truce Monument rightfully belongs to Arsenal. Once the various worlds that have leased it have finished using it, I, Fang Chen, will bring the monument in person to Arsenal to complete the transaction. Jian Qingmei shot a sidelong glance at the black-robed youth, the corners of her mouth lifting with schadenfreude. A fallen phoenix is no better than a chicken. Sorry, but Arsenal is definitely taking this Truce Monument. Though the black-robed youth's face could not be seen clearly, the face hidden beneath the shadows must have been gloomy enough to wring out water at that moment. He let out a low, grating, and unnerving chuckle, speaking in a sarcastic tone. Interesting. Fang Chen of Central Earth, is it? We will meet again very soon. Heh heh heh. His cold, sinister gaze locked firmly onto Fang Chen, and his form began to fade from solid to illusory, gradually dissipating until it vanished entirely. Only after he had completely disappeared did all the sages present simultaneously let out a long breath of relief. Fang Chen then suddenly realized that from the moment the black-robed youth had revealed his Nanqian identity, not a single person in the venue had dared to make a sound. It just went to show what kind of crushing pressure that black-robed man's terrifying background had exerted upon them. Jiang Yishan scratched his head and approached with a hesitant look on his face. Fang Chen, you shouldn't have refused him. Those maniacs from Nanqian are truly not to be trifled with. Fang Chen remained composed and said lightly, we don't even fear those ancient giants that devour living beings. Are we supposed to be afraid of a bunch of madmen? A trace of admiration showed in Jian Qingmei's eyes as she sized up Fang Chen once more, as expected of someone praised by young Master Zhang, truly extraordinary. Looking across the myriad worlds and 100 realms, there are hardly any left who dare to openly challenge a noble of Nanqian. Rest assured that scoundrel is merely bluffing. Right now, Nanqian itself has encountered a tremendous upheaval and can barely manage its own affairs. How could it spare any strength to deal with you? Upon hearing this, Fang Chen's heart steadied, and he remained even more composed. He nodded, cupped his hands, and said, many thanks for the information, Senior Jian. Please return and await calmly. Once I have properly handled the calamity of the ancient giants for the various worlds that have leased it, I will certainly bring the Truce Monument to Arsenal personally to complete the transaction with you. Jian Qingmei gave a slight nod, but then instructed, you must also be careful. That fellow must have been wandering near Central Earth on some mission. Either a major event has occurred nearby, or some important figure has appeared. When you travel through the void, be sure to stay extra vigilant. If you die, I'll have nowhere to claim the Truce Monument. Fang Chen's gaze flickered slightly. He then cupped his hands respectfully. This junior understands. I bid you farewell, senior. Jian Qingmei nodded gently, and her figure abruptly turned into an afterimage, vanishing where she stood. Fang Chen then turned to the remaining sages, cupped his hands with a smile, and said, seniors, now that the matter of the Truce Monument has been settled, if you don't mind, why not come and sit a while in my Central Earth? The group of sages from beyond the heavens all revealed expressions of interest. They too were extremely eager to know just what kind of realm this Central Earth was, and why it always gave rise to one strange and terrifying, formidable figure after another. But just at that very moment, From within the boundless void, an extremely long swing, seemingly without end, abruptly came swaying over from the distant depths of darkness in an instant. On the swing, a 6-year-old girl in a black pleated skirt sat leisurely, an innocent, radiant smile gracing her face. With that appearance, who else could it be but Kiki? In the span of a breath, the swing came to a steady halt before everyone at a speed nearly like teleportation. Kiki nimbly leaped down, blinking her large, glistening eyes, and smiled sweetly. Wow, the Middle Land is so lively. Has some big event happened? At the sight of Kiki, the faces of the assembled sages stiffened to the extreme. Some even couldn't help showing looks of dread and silently shrank back a little. Fang Chen couldn't help but roll his eyes. What took you so long? He had previously taken pains to delay the transaction of the truce deal, precisely to wait for Kiki to arrive. Only then could he thoroughly cooperate amicably with this little god of wealth. Fang Chen spread his hands and said leisurely, "Just now, this place concluded the Truce Steel Trade Assembly. You've arrived too late." Hearing this, Kiki's bright black eyes nearly popped out of her head as she cried out in shock. "What? You actually sold the Truce Steel? Why didn't you let me know?" She had been coveting that Truce Steel for a long time. After finally waiting for a chance, Fang Chen had actually sold it to someone else. If it had fallen into her hands with a bit of flipping, wouldn't she have easily made a tenfold profit? Fang Chen shrugged with a teasing look. "Didn't you claim to be the shrewdest merchant across the myriad worlds? How could your information be so delayed?" Kiki furiously scanned the many sages present, clenching her little pink fists, her teeth gritting audibly. "You lot, how can every one of you have a tighter mouth than the last? Not even a shred of news leaked out." The sages looked at each other, their eyes all conveying the same meaning. The news of the truce steel was something they wished to rot in their bellies. Who would let it out to attract rivals? Kiki glared at Fang Chen in frustration, grinding her teeth. "How much did you sell it for?" Fang Chen spread his hands and answered frankly, 12 merit divine orbs for breaking through to sage. Kiki quickly calculated in her mind. The price was fair enough, but the fact that she hadn't been able to profit from it gnawed at her so much that she ground her silver teeth. She coolly swept her gaze over the sages present and snorted, "I'll give you 40 sages. Sell it to me." Fang Chen looked at her puzzledly and asked, "Where would you get so many sages?" Kiki folded her arms and sneered, "Aren't there 40 masterless sages right here? I'll sell them all to you." Fang Chen's heart lurched, and he almost cursed inwardly. The otherworldly sages who had been planning to travel the Middle Land all turned green on the spot. One sage hastily cupped his hands and forced a smile. "Young friend Fang, my soul is about to farrow. I must hurry back. Farewell, farewell." Another sage, even more flustered, invented an excuse at random. "Oh, I suddenly remembered. My house was on fire when I left. Maybe I'll visit the Middle Land some other time. Farewell." In the blink of an eye, most of the 40 sages had fled. Only the 10 who had rented the true steel remained, along with the great dream demon empress and the sage of the myriad poisons realm, who wished to leave but could not. Fang Chen was secretly shaken. He muttered to himself, "No way, is Kiki really this terrifying?" The white tiger's whip had been treated as an ownerless object in her eyes, which was already outrageous enough. Who would have thought that sages would also become ownerless objects before her? But isn't Kiki just a great Empyrean at the 5th decay of heaven and man? Kiki watched the fleeing backs and huffed angrily. "HMPH, count yourselves lucky you ran fast." She turned her head and glared at Fang Chen again. "Brat, sell the true steel to me, and I'll get you 13 merit divine orbs." Fang Chen shook his head without hesitation and replied gravely, "Unless the other party reneges and refuses it, the deal is set. I will never sell it a second time." Kiki pouted, her face full of grievance. "To think we share a friendship forged in adversity, yet you never think of me when there's profit to be made." Fang Chen gave a mysterious smile and lowered his voice. "Who says I don't? I have some fine things just waiting to trade with you." Upon hearing this, Kiki's expression slightly eased. If another spirit transformation cultivator claimed to have good stuff, she would have to question it. But when Fang Chen said it, she had no choice but to believe it, because this fellow was truly covered in treasures. Fang Chen raised his hand and beckoned. "Come, let's return to the Middle Land before we talk." He led Kiki and the remaining otherworldly sages back into the Middle Land. Inside the Heavenly Secrets Pavilion, the Grand Libationers were tasked with entertaining the Great Dream Demon Empress and the sages, while Fang Chen brought Kiki alone to his private chamber. He closed the stone door and, with a wave of his hand, set up a barrier. Kiki stared at him with sparkling eyes and urged, "Quick, take out whatever treasures you have." Fang Chen unhurriedly took out the scripture of suppressing hell and calming souls and handed it over. Let's first complete the trade we agreed upon last time. This is the scripture of suppressing hell and calming souls you wanted. The original copy of the scripture had been destroyed, but fortunately, the Holy Son of Shura had found a new volume at West Spirit Mountain in the Buddhist domain, which ultimately ended up in Fang Chen's hands. Otherwise, this deal would have been hard to close. Kiki's eyes lit up fiercely. She had been longing for this scripture for a long time. She readily flipped her hand and produced a fist-sized transparent crystal, within which strands of law chains, like living creatures, weaved and flowed. This was no ordinary crystal. It was clearly a massive concentration of law power condensed into a single mass. The complete laws of a 3 calamities stage sage, as you requested. Take it. Fang Chen excitedly took the crystal, his hands trembling slightly. He had never been exposed to such vast law power. If he poured all of this into the primordial heaven, imprisoning Gourd, he truly didn't know to what terrifying extent the Gourd would be illuminated. Next, Kiki carefully pinched out a strand of hair and said gravely, "The treasure you requested that can kill a sage. It contains the death law, capable of slaying a 3-day giant, emperor, or a fully cultivated 1 calamity sage." Fang Chen's heart immediately began pounding wildly. Up to now, although he had many treasures, none could clearly blast a sage to death. Preciousness of this strand of hair was self-evident. Kiki hesitated for a moment, a sheepish look on her face, then produced 2 long swords with fierce spiritual pressure, clearly 2 top-grade spirit swords. She smiled awkwardly. "Of the 3 top-grade spirit swords you wanted, I only found 2. Could you take a loss and just accept it?" Actually, Fang Chen had already gathered 7 top-grade spirit swords. Evil Sword, Purple Lightning, Azure Frost, Listening Snow, Thousand Phantoms, Thunderlord, and Earthfang. He only lacked 2 more to complete the set of 9, achieving the perfection of the Grand Derivation sword formation. The 2 Kiki brought just filled the final gaps. However, this little black market dealer actually told him to just accept it. Is that something a person should say? Fang Chen suppressed his pounding heart, put on a stern face, and snorted, "With incomplete goods, you still expect full payment, then I'll have to tear a few pages from the scripture." He made a motion to unseal the scripture's binding, scaring Kiki into a sudden change of expression. She hurriedly reached out to stop him, crying urgently, "No, don't. Can't I compensate you otherwise?" If the scripture lost any page, it would be completely ruined, and obtaining it would be as good as not. Fang Chen secretly rejoiced, but his face remained tightly drawn as he asked slowly, "Compensate with what? Top-grade spirit swords are very precious, you know." Kiki bit her red lip, knowing full well that Fang Chen was seizing the chance to rip her off terribly, yet she could do nothing about it. Normally, given a month, gathering 3 top-grade spirit swords from the myriad worlds would be as easy as flipping her palm. But recently, a mysterious power had been scouring the void for top-grade spirit swords, making it impossible for her to even gather 3. Unable to deliver the agreed items, she could only let Fang Chen bleed her dry. Kiki pouted and reluctantly asked, "What do you lack?" Fang Chen's heart began pounding again. He lacked far too many things. He immediately spoke, "I want the earth origin, heaven origin, and wind origin." Kiki furrowed her brows deeply. "I could get you some earth origin and wind origin, but what is this heaven origin? I've never even heard of it." Fang Chen was slightly taken aback. With Kiki's experience, she didn't even know of the heaven origin. A faint intuition rose in his heart. If in the future he got bottlenecked in the void flow 5 strengths, it would most likely be on this mysterious heaven origin. Upon hearing that the origin of wind and the origin of earth would also require Kiki to seek them out separately, Fang Chen immediately lost interest. Time waits for no one. After a moment's thought, he changed tack and asked, "Then surely you have the resources for breaking through the 5 decays of heaven and man." Kiki rubbed her chin, let out a sheepish dry laugh, and said, "What a coincidence, a human came to me recently and bought them. But I do have a lead on a great medicine. I can give you a discount." Fang Chen waved his hands repeatedly. A mere lead is far too uncertain. It might have already been snatched up by someone else, or it could be hiding immense danger. It's not worth a single top-grade spirit sword. Kiki, frustrated by his pickiness, stamped her foot and said, "You don't want this, you don't want that. Choose for yourself." She simply waved her sleeve, and with a flutter, a dazzling array of items spilled out. There were spirit tools, spirit pills, heavenly and earthly spirit herbs, as well as talismans and formations, fully 1,000 varieties. Without exception, each was an exceedingly rare treasure. Fang Chen merely glanced at them, but was so dazzled that for a moment he didn't know what to pick. Just then, his gaze suddenly flickered. He realized that the spatial storage device on his body, specially used to hold the shards of the immortal king's imperishable bell, was actually producing a faint resonance. Among the treasures Kiki brought out, was there something that could stir the immortal king's imperishable bell? Fang Chen forcefully suppressed the excitement in his heart, his eyes rapidly scanning until finally, amidst the dazzling heap of treasures, he spotted a snow-white little bell. Its appearance was exactly the same as the immortal king's imperishable bell. The only difference was that this little bell was merely a spirit body. What it truly was already on the tip of his tongue. It was the artifact spirit of the immortal king's imperishable bell. The artifact spirit of a realm artifact. Fang Chen's heart nearly leaped out of his throat. He had acquired so many realm artifacts, yet he had never encountered one that possessed an artifact spirit. At least he had never sensed one. He could never have imagined that hidden within Kiki's collection was a realm artifact spirit like this. His first impulse was to snatch it up, but on second thought, he forcibly restrained himself. Knowing Kiki's black-hearted nature, if he showed too much eagerness, that girl would surely make an outrageous demand and ruthlessly fleece him. Fang Chen feigned an indifferent air, cast a disdainful glance at the other treasures, clicked his tongue, and said, "What sort of junk have you collected?" "I don't fancy a single piece." Kiki planted her hands on her slim waist, tilted her head, bared her silver teeth, and glared at him furiously. "Say that again, I dare you. You call me black-hearted, I won't hold it against you, but call my things junk, and I won't let it go. Pick one now." Only then did Fang Chen reluctantly sift through the many treasures, finally accidentally touching that snow-white little bell. Holding it between his fingers, he muttered with disgust, "Why, a broken artifact spirit, you really stuff anything into your pocket." Kiki immediately took offense and exclaimed loudly, "Do you have no eye for quality? Is this an ordinary artifact spirit? Can't you sense the realm artifact's oppressive aura emanating from it?" Fang Chen took the opportunity to put on a surprised expression, even raising his voice a few notches. "A realm artifact spirit. Then where is the realm artifact?" Kiki snorted in annoyance. "If I had a realm artifact, would I have taken out just the artifact spirit for you to pick through? I separated the realm artifact and the spirit long ago. The remains of that bell were sold to the sages a long time ago." Fang Chen, however, showed a disgusted expression and said sarcastically, "What's the use without the realm artifact? What good is just an artifact spirit? Isn't it still useless?" Upon hearing this, Kiki let out an indignant snort. "Don't you underestimate it. It is the artifact spirit of the former number 1 defensive supreme treasure of the heavenly realm, the immortal king's imperishable bell. The reason that immortal king's imperishable bell could claim to be the strongest defense in the heavenly realm, capable of absorbing laws, karma, and even withstanding the attacks of sages without being destroyed, was largely due to the crucial role of this artifact spirit. Because the origin of this artifact spirit is extremely extraordinary, it is innately capable of repairing all kinds of magical artifacts throughout the world. Later, it was refined by a great power using supreme divine abilities, and only then became the artifact spirit of the immortal king's imperishable bell. Whenever the bell suffered damage in fierce battle, the artifact spirit could instantly restore it to its original state. Now, even though you don't have that bell, you can completely use it to repair other magical artifacts. For example, if your top grade spirit sword gets damaged in a fight, just give it to this spirit, and it'll be fixed in a jiffy. Hearing this explanation, Fang Chen felt his heart pounding furiously in his chest, as if it were about to leap out. He had been puzzled all along. How could a realm artifact renowned for its defense, like the immortal king's imperishable bell, shatter so easily under mere sage-level attacks? So it was because the artifact spirit was missing. If he had such an artifact spirit, couldn't those fragments of the immortal king's imperishable bell be repaired and restored into a complete bell? He immediately forced himself to stay calm, clenched the artifact spirit in his palm, deliberately put on a dubious expression, and stared at Kiki as he probed. "You're not pulling my leg, are you?" Seeing this, Kiki promptly thumped her chest and loudly assured, "Relax, why would I deceive you? And oh, if one day you get lucky and actually find that shattered immortal king's imperishable bell, then you'll truly have struck it rich. With this bell on your back, you'll be able to run rampant across the myriad heavens and 100 realms, fearing no one." Fang Chen then took the opportunity to appear interested, nodded, and said, "All right, I'll take this artifact spirit then." Seeing him agree, Kiki was inwardly overjoyed. She gloated to herself, muttering, "What a wishful-thinking fellow, still hoping to find the immortal king's imperishable bell. I, your great-aunt, have searched the southern heaven realm countless times and haven't even found a trace. If you ever manage to find it, I'll write my name Kiki backwards from now on." Having finished her inward mockery, she swiftly put away the rest of the items, then eagerly stretched out 2 small hands and urged, "Quick, that scripture of hell suppression and soul quelling, hand it over so I can take a look." Fang Chen, being straightforward, promptly tossed the scripture over as agreed. Kiki caught it, opened it immediately, and stared with eyes wide and drool almost dripping. As she flipped through it, she exclaimed in admiration, "This is the closely guarded secret of the Hell Realm's Buddha, the scripture of hell suppression and soul quelling. It can truly be called the ultimate tool for reaping merit. If I make 9,900 copies and sell just 100 in each world, I definitely make a killing. Wahaha, this time I've really hit the jackpot." While Kiki was engrossed in her ecstasy, Fang Chen likewise quietly swallowed his saliva and discreetly put away the artifact spirit of the immortal king's imperishable bell. He wished he could send Kiki away right then and there and immediately start repairing the immortal king's imperishable bell. However, he still had matters that required Kiki's help. As they spoke, he hadn't forgotten about his own business. He flipped his palm, and 2 spatial storage devices appeared in Fang Chen's hand. One belonged to 6 in Old Dog. The other was Wang Chengxiao's. The former was the spatial storage device of a sage, so it must contain a vast amount of resources. As for the latter, he was even more curious to know if Wang Chengxiao's storage device still contained that kind of black formation stone. At the moment, neither of these 2 storage devices had the corresponding opening incantations. To get the treasures inside, they could only be forcibly broken open. And in this area, Kiki was the absolute expert. Fang Chen smiled, interrupting the still drooling Kiki, and tempted her, "Wipe your drool, I'll give you some benefits. Help me break open these 2 spatial storage devices, and we'll split the contents 50-50, same old rule." Another deal to break open spatial storage devices. Kiki immediately became interested. She loved this kind of no-risk business best. She immediately took the 2 spatial storage devices, examined them carefully in her hands, and said seriously, "The owners of the storage devices aren't here, and we don't know incantations, so we can force them open. However, the consequence of doing so is that a considerable portion of the contents will be lost. What treasures remain in the end will be entirely up to luck. Are you sure you want to force them open?" Fang Chen waved his hand without hesitation. "What's to fear? They're not my things anyway. Loss is just loss. Whatever we salvage, it's pure profit." Kiki's eyes lit up brilliantly upon hearing this, and she clapped her hands with a laugh. "True, right. Why should we feel sorry for their master? It's none of our concern. Open." As her words fell, she mysteriously produced a palm-sized black windmill. Though small, every blade seemed to contain enigmatic laws, radiating an air of profound extraordinariness. "Let's settle this first, half each." Kiki's eyes glinted with cunning as she added, "And this time I get to pick first. After all, my magical artifact wears out with each use. It's incredibly precious." Fang Chen didn't hesitate. With a magnanimous wave of his hand, he said, "No problem." Deep down, he knew full well that without Kiki's windmill, he wouldn't be able to retrieve even a single strand of what was inside. If she wanted first pick, so be it. After all, if Kiki truly took those black formation stones, he could just use the dog bowl to snatch them back. No matter how he calculated it, he wouldn't lose out. Seeing Fang Chen agree so readily, Kiki felt oddly uncomfortable. She tilted her head, studied him, and puzzled. "Why do you suddenly look so handsome and refined?" She wasn't quite used to this Fang Chen, who had abruptly rediscovered his conscience. Fang Chen deliberately blinked, putting on an innocent face. "You must have had some misunderstanding about me before. All right, enough chatter. Let's get to work." Though a vague sense of unease lingered in Kiki's heart, she genuinely couldn't figure out where the trap lay. Scratching her head, she resigned herself and set to work. Taking a deep breath, she blew fiercely onto the little windmill. It instantly swelled in the wind, growing to Kiki's own height in the blink of an eye. At the windmill's center was a fist-sized cavity. She carefully placed Wang Chengxiao's storage artifact inside. Then she vaulted onto one blade, stomping down hard. The windmill began to turn slowly. Next, she leaped onto another blade, and then the next. As the windmill spun faster, Kiki scampered across it like a tiny mouse, her figure blurring into afterimages. Meanwhile, the storage artifact within the cavity seemed crushed by an unbearable pressure, emitting a brittle, agonized crack, teetering on the verge of rupture. At that exact moment, Kiki decisively jumped off the windmill. The unknown laws upon the blades activated in succession, forcibly bypassing the artifact's incantations. Like invisible needles, they viciously pierced into its depths. The next instant, a chaotic cascade of clattering erupted as swathes of items were violently wrenched out by the spinning blades and hurled backward. The scene resembled a windmill dipping into a water channel, scooping up the passing current. And so, the contents of the storage artifact were roughly ladled out in part. Then came a deafening bang. The artifact, unable to withstand the terrifying force any longer, exploded on the spot. As the windmill gradually halted, the ground lay strewn with haphazard items. Fang Chen's gaze flashed like lightning. He spotted the 6 black formation stones bound together in a single glance, and his breath caught in his throat with sheer excitement. That Wang Qingmei really did stash away black formation stones, and a full 6 of them, no less. This quasi-realm artifact formation, blending offense and defense, was composed of 1 white formation stone and 18 black formation stones in total. Thus far, 12 black formation stones had surfaced. As for the remaining 6, it was unclear whether Wang Qingmei had failed to assemble them all or simply hadn't yet acquired them. Just as Fang Chen's mind raced, a whoosh sounded. Kiki lunged forward in a desperate pounce, pinning the 6 black formation stones beneath her body as she shrieked, "These are mine." As expected of a merchant who traversed the void year, her eyes never missed true treasures. Beaming with delight, she cradled the 6 black formation stones and exclaimed, "These must be treasures of the heavenly realm too, part of some quasi-realm artifact." Excellent. To avoid any mishap, she merely glanced at them before hastily tossing the stones into her own storage artifact, only then sparing a moment to survey her surroundings. Apart from the 6 black formation stones, the rest were merely spirit pills, herbs, and assorted personal effects, nothing of real worth. Fang Chen harbored no complaints. He simply picked up a few herbs that still held some value. His unruffled demeanor, however, made Kiki, who had just gained an immense advantage, feel a twinge of guilt. She hadn't expected that the spatial storage device of a deity transformation stage cultivator would conceal such a heaven-defying treasure. Even more surprising, aside from this one treasure, everything else was utter garbage. Fang Chen had kindly provided the storage artifact, yet in the end, he gained nothing. How about this then? Kiki, in a rare moment of conscience, offered, "For the remaining spatial storage device, I'll let you pick first." Fang Chen seemed wholly indifferent. "Sure," he replied offhandedly. He hadn't expected to unearth any peerless killer weapon from the compassionate heart, old dog's storage. If such a thing existed, that old dog wouldn't have died so easily back then. He only hoped to extract more cultivation resources to nourish the living beings of the Middle Continent. This could be seen as making that compassionate heart old dog repay a fraction of his blood debt to the Middle Continent. Kiki immediately followed suit, leaping back onto the windmill and transforming into a diligent little hamster once more. Before long, as the compassionate heart sage spatial storage device emitted a groan of unbearable strain and ruptured, vast quantities of items poured out like a waterfall, scattering everywhere. That old dog's hoard was far richer than Wang Qingmei's. Fang Chen's eyes were nearly dazzled into disbelief. With the storage device utterly destroyed, Kiki scanned the area with eager anticipation. Abruptly, as if sensing something, she whipped her head around and stared at a chaotic pile of spirit herbs. Amidst the layered green leaves, a faintly visible earthy, yellow crystal lay quietly. Although the crystal emitted no earth-shattering aura, Kiki's intuition screamed wildly that this was unquestionably a peerless divine artifact. Instinctively, she wanted to lunge forward and claim it for herself. Yet recalling that she had just promised Fang Chen first pick, Kiki forcefully halted, feigning nonchalance. She clasped her hands behind her head and whistled guiltily, You pick first." While casually brushing it off, Kiki unobtrusively shifted to a corner and stealthily pressed her foot down on the crystal to keep it hidden from Fang Chen. Fang Chen paid little mind, his gaze sweeping the area. He spotted several remarkably valuable treasures and was about to choose one. But suddenly, a jolt of suspicion struck him. It didn't add up. That money, grubbing Kiki, remained unmoved by all this. Unless she had stumbled upon something even more precious. Fang Chen's eyes landed on Kiki, glinting with amusement. Sure enough, he noticed her foot resting on a clump of spirit herbs in a secluded corner. Something was definitely afoot. Smiling, he approached her and said, "Move your foot." Kiki rolled her eyes at him. "Even junk spirit herbs, you want them." Saying this, she kept her soul pressed to the earth and slid her foot aside. The crystal stone immediately scraped a long groove into the ground. Fang Chen laughed, lifting Kiki up with both hands to reveal the earthy yellow crystal she had stomped into the dirt. He peered at it intently. Oh, a crystal stone. It didn't look particularly unique. If it were lying on the ground, he might not even bother to pick it up. But for Kiki to hide it meant it was certainly no ordinary object. Kiki shrugged, feigning indifference. All right, I just thought this stone was pretty and wanted to add it to my collection. If you like it, then take it. Such reverse psychology was utterly useless on him. Fang Chen chuckled, reached out through the air and seized the crystal in his palm. All right, then I'll take this one. Kiki wrenched free from Fang Chen's grip, jumped down, and fumed. You bastard, why don't you play by the rules? Fang Chen shook the crystal, grinning. First, tell me what this is. Who knows, if I think it's useless, I might give it to you. Kiki fixed her burning gaze on the crystal. Based on my years of experience, it should be a fragment of a realm artifact. Fang Chen's spirit surged with a sudden, intense jolt. A fragment of a realm artifact. He stared at the crystal stone before him, an expression of utter disbelief on his face. Then, as if struck by lightning, he realized something and began comparing the crystal's dimensions, his pupils contracting inch by inch. This size, wasn't it exactly the missing pendant from the 10,000 Earths heart necklace, a realm artifact? It was. That old dog Sixin had once ventured into the second layer and even brought out a little killin. Since he had a method to extract the killin through the barrier formation, then the 10,000 Earths sent in the adjacent secret chamber, lying draped over the formation, must also have been his handiwork. The missing pendant from its necklace had surely been taken by that old dog Sixin. Only the sudden arrival of the Taudi had prevented him from seizing the necklace itself. Fang Chen could scarcely believe it. The incomplete 10,000 Earth's heart had just been completed, all of a sudden. He had assumed some explorer from the past 10,000 years might have taken it, making it harder to find than a needle in the vast ocean. Never did he imagine it would be in the possession of that old dog Sixin, tucked inside a spatial storage artifact. A wild, secret joy surged within Fang Chen. Another realm artifact acquired. But he couldn't let it show. Otherwise, Kiki would resort to any trick to snatch the crystal away. Stroking his chin, Fang Chen feigned nonchalance. Another realm artifact fragment. I'll take this one then. Who knows, I might stumble upon the matching piece. Kiki stomped her foot in frustration. If only she hadn't softened earlier and let Fang Chen pick first. Why couldn't she just be a proper profiteer? Why pretend to be a good person? In this world, playing the good guy comes at a cost. On the verge of tears, Kiki glared at Fang Chen. I'm never opening spatial storage artifacts with you again. I always end up losing out, HMPH. Fang Chen chuckled. Don't rush. There's still one more thing for you to open. He produced an extremely heavy spatial storage artifact covered in cracks, as though barely containing the pressure of whatever lay within. Curious, Kiki swept her senses inside, and a grand bronze palace entered her vision. After just one look, she gasped sharply, Ah, a saint's mobile palace, you even dare take a saint's palace? How many lives do you have? Fang Chen only smiled. A mobile palace, so what? Even the saint himself had been subdued until he was perfectly docile. In a light tone, Fang Chen remarked, Dare you open this palace? Who knows how many treasures lie within? Unexpectedly, Kiki refused without a moment's hesitation. I still wish to live within a saint's palace. Who knows what crises lurk? If anything escapes, our deaths would be the least of it. Your entire Taking Great Province might be leveled. Fang Chen felt a pang of disappointment. Kiki, laden with treasures herself, didn't even dare to probe a saint's palace. He had been counting on absorbing some of the saintly might within to fully open the palm of the painting heart and seize that blood ink. Kiki's eyes sparkled as she gazed at the spatial storage artifact, licking her lips. However, after I make thorough preparations, I might give it a try. Fang Chen smiled faintly. Agreed. Our usual rule, half each. Kiki's smile returned, and she began to gleefully sort through the belongings of that old dog Sixin. Fang Chen also collected his half. The sheer quantity of resources was staggering, enough to supply all the warriors of Taking Great Province for an entire 60-year cycle. And this was even after Kiki had taken half, and a considerable portion had been lost during the forced openings. The original contents of the spatial storage artifacts must have been an astronomical figure. When a whale falls, all things flourish. These are no mere 6 words. Beaming, Kiki said, What other business do you have? This trip to the Middle Earth has truly been worthwhile. After a moment of thought, Fang Chen pointed to his forehead. I've been branded with a mark by the chaotic ancient blood marquee from your sin realm. Is there a way to remove it? Kiki's expression grew grave. How did you catch his attention? There are 7 marquees in the sin realm, all old monsters who reached the peak of the 3 calamities realm thousands of years ago. Their depths are unfathomable, utterly incomparable to newly ascended 3 calamities cultivators. A solemn light flickered in Fang Chen's eyes. He had felt that firsthand. When the chaotic ancient blood marquis hurled his crimson spear across the void, even the 9 hells Asura Emperor and the 9 suns Giant Emperor of the southern heaven realm, I King one after another, could not fully block it. The horror of his power was plain. Fang Chen's voice was heavy. Can the mark be erased? It had been nearly 10 days since the blood marquis's last attack. He had almost purged the tainted blood from the spear. At any moment, another strike could come. And his brand allowed the blood marquis to lock onto him across the vast void, leaving him no place to flee. Kiki shook her head. Erasure is impossible. In essence, that brand is a law of the chaotic ancient blood marquis. Unless someone wields a superior law, it cannot be removed. However, just as Fang Chen's face fell, Kiki produced a brush. I can temporarily mask the blood brand. As long as the blood marquis doesn't come close, he won't sense it. The effect will last 1 month. Fang Chen's eyes brightened. Then what are we waiting for? Kiki held out her pale, petite palm. You want me to help for free? Give me that realm artifact crystal, and I'll help you. What? A true little profiteer, indeed. She knew exactly how to profit from someone's misfortune. His face dark, Fang Chen brought out a small jade bottle. Inside was a single drop of tainted blood. The moment it was taken out, Kiki reflexively leaped back, her expression severe. The scent of a Dao slave. This is Asura, sacred blood, contaminated by a Dao slave's aura. Fang Chen tossed it to her, urging, quickly, shield my blood mark. Kiki snapped to her senses, cradling the jade bottle. Her face instantly lit up. Treasures from you are like water from a sponge. No matter how you squeeze, it never runs out. Grinning, she put away the bottle and stepped forward with the brush. On Fang Chen's forehead, she painted a transparent flame mark, explaining when the blood mark reacts, the flame mark will burn first, releasing a unique aura to suppress it. It lasts only 1 month. I hope I can complete my preparations to open the Saint's Palace within that time. Otherwise, the blood marquis will never stop hunting you. Fang Chen nodded, feeling much more at ease. A major threat had been temporarily resolved. Seeing Kiki about to leave, Fang Chen said, I have some items to order to be settled when you return next time. Interested, Kiki asked, what do you need? Laws, different laws. I'll take as many as you can provide. If it was true, as the remnant soul of the Saint Angel had said, that his ancestral ring was unsuited for the Sage realm, then his only path was body refinement. The countless laws required by the Asterisk Lishan, Xinan Sutra Asterisk, would need a super merchant like Kiki's help to gather. This was destined to be a long-term transaction. A flicker of surprise crossed Kiki's face. She didn't understand why Fang Chen needed so many different laws, but she was a shrewd merchant who knew never to pry into a client's secrets. Her eyes rolled slyly, and she asked with a smile, no problem, but what will you trade? Law energy is extremely precious, you know. Fang Chen was ready. With a thought, his divine sense plunged deep into the breathing earth herb garden. He had only intended to take a pinch of breathing earth. But as he focused and examined the garden, he froze. An astonishing change had occurred within. In this 1-acre garden, a dense tangle of purple vines had grown everywhere. The transplanted spirit herbs seized from the treacherous cloud crane sage were now squeezed to the brink of extinction. Fang Chen's brow furrowed in surprise. What is this? He traced the vines back along their spreading direction, seeking their source. Ultimately, he traced it to a seed stuck in place. As he stared at that spot and racked his brain, it suddenly hit him, the immortal binding vine. When he had woven the immortal binding vine into a rope, a fragment of root no bigger than a fingernail was left over. He had casually stuck it into the breathing earth. Back then, it was simply an experiment to see if it would take root. He had never imagined it would overrun the entire garden. And it looked utterly different from its original form. Compared to the initial green of the immortal binding vine, its tendrils had now turned deep purple. Cold, gleaming thorns now covered every inch of the vine. Strange purple sap was even slowly seeping out from the tips of those thorns. A chill ran down Fang Chen's spine. Could it be poisonous? I'd better have Tianjian test it later. He first steadied his mind, retrieved a handful of resting soil, and returned his consciousness to the outside world. The moment his awareness returned, Kiki's complaining voice reached his ears. Are you off wandering among the stars? Fang Chen unhurriedly handed over the resting soil. What do you think of this? Kiki's gaze sharpened, a flicker of surprise crossing her face before she curled her lip. Resting soil, yes, precious enough, but this measly pinch isn't enough to grow a single spirit herb. Fang Chen quirked the corner of his mouth, wearing an expression hovering between smile and smirk. This is merely a sample. Oh? Kiki's face clouded with suspicion. She traced a circle in the air before her. So you have this much. Fang Chen inclined his head slightly. Kiki's eyes lit up in an instant. She then swept a much larger circle around the entire chamber. More than this. Fang Chen exhaled 3 calm words. Even more. Well? Kiki sucked in a sharp breath, her eyes bulging. You didn't just move the entire heavenly realm garden, did you? Fang Chen merely smiled, silent. Kiki understood at once. That was as good as an admission. She clutched her chest, her face a mask of sheer agony. Heavens, just kill me. Seeing you strike it rich is worse than death. Her voice rose, almost wailing. The resting soil garden in the heavenly realm was paved with the resting origin immortal mountain, one of the 4 great immortal mountains. How did it end up in your hands? Where did I fall short? Oh! A look of astonishment crossed Fang Chen's face. The original form of the resting soil had once been one of the heavenly realm's 4 great immortal mountains. No wonder it possessed such heaven, defying abilities. He mused for a moment, then spoke thoughtfully. If you want it, then gather as much law force as you possibly can. Kiki ground her silver teeth, glaring daggers at Fang Chen. She stamped her foot and cursed. I really want to rob you, you bastard. Arg, arg. Stamping her feet and sighing in frustration, she transformed into a streak of light and shot into the clouds. Watching this, Fang Chen couldn't help but crack a smile. It had to be said, this transaction with Kiki had yielded gains nothing short of unprecedented. The Grand Evolution sword array was now fully complete, and the power of the primordial imprisoning heaven gourd had been unleashed to its greatest extent yet. Not only had it slain the sage, securing the strand of Deathlaw, it had also eliminated the hidden threat of the chaotic ancient blood, Marquis. As if that weren't enough, he had even obtained the immortal king's indestructible bell's artifact spirit and the heart of 10,000 soils pendant. Kiki was practically his lucky star, a sibling, in arms on par with his good brother Wang Chengxiao. Without delay, he produced the law force of the 3 calamities realm sage, and channeled it entirely into the primordial imprisoning heaven gourd. In an instant, the yellow gourd was completely illuminated. Last time, only after expending copious amounts of law wine and receiving the successive infusions of 9 Grand Libationers had he barely managed to light it. As a result, when capturing the Dark 9 Hells Asura Emperor Guikai, it had gotten stuck halfway down the bottleneck. Now that the gourd was fully lit, it could flawlessly capture an entire 3 calamities realm sage. Of course, the prerequisite remained that one must know their true name. Figures like the chaotic ancient blood Marquis or the 9 Suns giant Emperor Fang Chen hadn't yet managed to ascertain their true names. But the heavenly realm's Dark 9 Hells Asura Emperor, that was hardly difficult to guess. With a thought, Fang Chen raised his hand and released the siblings Tianzhan and Tianj. Suddenly granted freedom, Tianzhan froze for a split second, then a fierce light blazed in his eyes. He decisively slammed a palm into the stone door and shot out like a bolt of lightning. The moment he burst from the chamber, he spat, a black pill hidden inside his body shot forth and struck the space ahead, forcibly melting open a void rift just large enough for a single person. His heart pounded wildly, uncontrollably. For an entire month, he had endured humiliation and borne heavy burdens, never once defying Fang Chen. He had waited for this single once, in a millennium moment. Tianzhan flickered and plunged toward the void. Right before departing, he turned his head with a sneer, his eyes brimming with venomous hatred. He spoke with a grim chuckle. Didn't expect that, did you? I still had one life, saving divine ability hidden away. I've been waiting for the moment you let your guard down and released me. Fang Chen remained composed, speaking unhurriedly. Are you abandoning your mother and 2 younger sisters? If you run, I might very well kill them. Ha ha ha. Tianjian let out a bone-chilling cold laugh, his face twisting. Did you think I'm like my mother, shackled by some damnable familial affection? If I were like her, always coming and going, I'd have left ages ago. His eyes bored into Fang Chen, his features contorted into ferocious intensity. Goodbye to you, the debt between us. I will repay it, stroke by stroke, stroke by stroke. The hatred churning in his eyes roiled like a towering tidal wave. Fang Chen's expression remained as calm as still water. He said flatly, did I give you permission to leave?" Before the words had finished, he slapped his storage pouch. A several hundred yang, long purple immortal, binding vine shot out with a piercing screech, like a maddened python bursting from its lair, lancing straight for Tianjian. Tianjian was utterly dismissive. Without hesitation, he reversed his fist and smashed it down onto the vine. "A mere vine thinks it can stop me." In his estimation, under his full-powered punch as a 5, Crown Asura King, the vine would either be pulverized or at the very least sent flying. Yet, to his shock, the violet vine remained utterly unaffected by his fist's pressure. Like a bolt of swift purple lightning, it lashed solidly onto his fist. At the moment of impact, the vine did not generate an overwhelming explosive force. Instead, the purple barbs along it were bizarrely strange. They pierced straight through the tough hide of the 5, Crown Asura King, burying deep into flesh and sinew. Tianjian felt only the faintest prick, like a mosquito's bite. Then his vision plunged into absolute darkness, and he toppled stiff as a board. Immediately, his entire face flooded with a black miasma. White foam poured from his mouth, and his unconscious body began convulsing violently. The void rift ahead silently sealed shut. He had fallen just one step short of his hope of escape. Nearby, Tianj was utterly stupefied. How could Fang Chen now handle a cultivator at the 5 decays of heaven and man as easily as drinking a cup of water? A casual flick of that vine, and her 5, Crown King brother just, collapsed. Fang Chen withdrew the vine with a look of surprise. As expected, the liquid within those barbs was nothing good. One simple prick, and a 5, Crown King, was poisoned to the brink of death. What exactly had he cultivated this thing into? Just then, the vine in his hand suddenly shrank back madly, retreating violently into his pouch. Fang Chen peered into the pouch and froze. It was that still-frame seed. It had unfurled its terrifying bulbous bud and was slurping up the several dozen Zhang purple immortal, binding vine like a noodle, sucking it right into its belly with a swift slurp. A vein throbbed violently on Fang Chen's forehead. This accursed thing, back then, it had even helped the immortal. Binding vine's root carefully cover with resting soil, he'd thought it was trying to grow a romance. When in fact, it was just grooming the vine to swallow it whole. Seeing his laboriously cultivated treasure about to be devoured, Fang Chen desperately grabbed hold of the vine, shouting, "Spit it out right now." The still-frame seed angrily wrenched its head, exploding with a terrifying, monstrous force. Even with Fang Chen's powerful body at the 4th decay of heaven and man, he was completely overwhelmed and hurled to the ground. To avoid those eerie purple thorns piercing his palm, he had no choice but to let go. Thus, the still-frame seed gulped down the entire immortal, binding vine in one mouthful. Fang Chen laughed in sheer disbelief. Have I raised myself a second treacherous brat? Right at that moment, the still-frame seed abruptly opened its mouth again and violently spat outward. With a ripping screech, the purple immortal, binding vine, seemed to have transformed into its very tongue, lashing out like lightning and coiling upwards into the sky. The very firmament was rolled back, revealing shocking, hair-azing void fissures. The power of that single strike carried the might of the 5 decays of heaven and man. Afterwards, the still-frame seed leisurely retracted the vine, holding its bulb high with an expression of supreme arrogance, as if showing off its newfound ability. Only then did Fang Chen instantly understand, after devouring the immortal, binding vine, the still-frame seed had assimilated it into its own body. He couldn't help but marvel inwardly. The still-frame seed actually possessed such a heaven-defying capability. He admitted he had sorely underestimated it. The only question was whether the purple immortal, binding vine's potent poison, would prove equally effective against the ancient giants. If so, this still-frame seed could play a pivotal role in the coming ancient war. It can hide silently underground and strike suddenly at a critical moment. Vine's hundreds of Zhang long swept out violently. Tens of thousands of giants were all poisoned collectively, collapsing to the ground in droves. An unexpected harvest. Fang Chen revealed a trace of a smile and put away the pouch with satisfaction. He raised his gaze and swept it onto Tianji. Tianji's delicate body trembled, her voice quivering. I won't go, don't hit me." As she spoke, the corner of her eye darted toward Tianjian, who was still foaming at the mouth and convulsing. Fang Chen showed a harmless smile and said, "Little sister Tianji, don't be afraid. You're different from your big brother. I won't mistreat you. When we reach the heavenly realm, I will even let you go." Upon hearing this, Tianji didn't feel relieved at all. Instead, she shrank into the corner of the secret chamber. She was terrified inside, calling her little sister and making empty promises. Was this her last meal before execution? She cried, "Please be fierce with me instead, I beg you. You're scaring me like this." Fang Chen rubbed his nose, thinking to himself, was he really that bad? Of course, he was indeed just making empty promises. Tianji had caused the deaths of many people from the 9 sects in the mainland, including Supreme Elder Zhu Qingyang, who had once helped him. Why would Fang Chen let her go? When the Dark Asura clan is subdued, that will be Tianji's time to die. He calmly took out the ancient mirror of reflecting heart and secretly reflected it at Tianji, then said, "Let's not beat around the bush. I want to make a deal with you. Tell me your father's true name, and when we return to the heavenly realm, I'll release you at an appropriate time." Tianji, who was in the midst of panic, showed a confused expression. "Why do you ask that?" Fang Chen was slightly disappointed. The true name of the 9 Hells Asura Emperor subconsciously flashed through Tianji's mind, but perhaps because of his overwhelming cultivation, the ancient mirror could not read it and only reflected a mess of noise. Thinking carefully back when Fang Chen was at the nascent soul realm, the mere mention of a sage was a forbidden taboo. The 9 Hells Asura Emperor, who was only a step away from sagehood, bore unpredictable karmic entanglements. It was no surprise that the ancient mirror could not reflect his true name. With the mirror useless, Fang Chen could only negotiate with Tianji. He stared at Tianji and said flatly, "Never mind why, just answer me." Tianji suddenly remembered and exclaimed in shock, You intend to use that gourd against my father." Their family of 4 had discussed Fang Chen at length inside the spatial mirror. Jian, having tasted the terror of the primordial heaven, imprisoning gourd, would naturally recount its dreadfulness. Fang Chen brought out the evil sword and casually swung it, the sword abruptly extended, its tip pressing against Tianji's heart. He said coldly, "If you don't speak, I'll kill you right now. If you do, I'll release you when we reach the heavenly realm. Choose." Tianji looked at the evil sword in fear, her face showing reluctance. When she noticed the killing intent in Fang Chen's eyes growing stronger, she hurriedly said, "I'll tell, but not now. If I say it now, I'll definitely die. When you're about to release me in the heavenly realm, I'll say it then." With a crisp, metallic clang, Fang Chen withdrew the evil sword. He said flatly, "You're not stupid. Fine, when we reach the heavenly realm, I will release you at an appropriate time." Immediately, he waved his hand and tossed her and Tianjian back into the spatial mirror. Fang Chen sneered inwardly, as expected of the one who stole the Hell's Eye and betrayed the entire Dark Asura clan. Only someone like her would sell out her own father. The reason he chose to deal with Tianji rather than the Asura Empress and Tianqian was naturally considered. That mother and daughter pair likely wouldn't betray the 9 Hells Asura Emperor. Only a selfish person like Tianji would. However, he faintly felt that Tianji agreed too easily. Could this woman be playing some trick? But thinking of Tianji's foolish and muddle-headed appearance, he felt he might be overthinking. Never mind, on this journey to the heavenly realm, he might not even encounter the 9 Hells Asura Emperor. He would deal with matters at hand first. Fang Chen flipped his palm, and a snow-white little bell, the size of a palm, appeared the artifact spirit of the immortal king's indestructible bell. It hovered motionlessly, without the slightest fluctuation. One would think it was a dead object. Fang Chen reached out and touched it. It still had no reaction. He probed, "Artifact spirit, can you hear me?" The artifact spirit still didn't respond. Fang Chen muttered, "You wouldn't be a mute bell, would you?" The snow-white artifact spirit suddenly shuddered and said in a milky voice, "You're the mute, your whole family are mutes." Fang Chen was momentarily speechless. He thought, see, the artifact spirits of purple lightning and 1,000 illusions could even fall in love. How could a world-grade artifact spirit be a dead thing? Turns out it simply didn't want to deal with him. "I heard you can repair all things under heaven," Fang Chen asked curiously. The artifact spirit disdainfully spat out a few words. "I can, won't help, scram." Fang Chen was irritated. This artifact spirit was really arrogant. No wonder Kiki didn't resist much when he chose the artifact spirit. She must have endured a lot of its attitude. Such a bad, tempered and unusable spirit, she wouldn't cherish it. Fang Chen irritably dumped all the fragments of the immortal king's indestructible bell onto the ground and asked, "Don't you want these either?" The high and mighty artifact spirit suddenly shook violently. A pair of wide eyes popped open on the snow-white bell body, revealing a look of disbelief. Then, an ecstatic shout came from within the bell. My body. My body." With a whoosh, the artifact spirit instantly flew above the fragments. As if drawn by an invisible force, the fragments all rose into the air with a clatter. Centering on the artifact spirit, they reassembled into a complete immortal king's indestructible bell. However, cracks like spider webs covered the entire bell, as if it would shatter again at the slightest touch. How did it break like this? The artifact spirit huffed angrily. Fang Chen's eyes flickered. He deliberately provoked, "You can't fix it, can you? If so, I'll just sell them as scrap." The artifact spirit immediately cried out, "Who says I can't? I just need a little time." Saying so, it released a milky white glow that seeped into every crack. Under the nourishment of the glow, the cracks began to slowly shrink at a faint rate. Fang Chen's face could not help but reveal a delighted expression. It really could be restored. The artifact spirit said smugly, "That'll teach you to look down on me, little human. Protect me for a month from now on. Once I'm repaired, I'll protect you 3 times. After that, I'll go find my own master, okay?" Fang Chen answered without hesitation, "Absolutely no problem. At that time, I'll even help you find your master." Upon hearing this, the artifact spirit exclaimed in surprise, "Ah, so you're actually a good person." Fang Chen said with a righteous expression, "You flatter me. I'm just following my conscience." "If you protect me 3 times, you'll be my lifesaver. My life will be yours, let alone helping you find your master." The artifact spirit was moved and sobbed, "Big brother, you're truly a great person, much better than that shady dealer who kept forcing me to repair artifacts all day." "No, she isn't even worthy to be compared to you. Big brother, rest assured, I'll protect you with my life. No one will harm you." Fang Chen patted the bell and smiled, "Then I thank you. Just focus on repairing." After speaking, he stowed the bell into his spatial storage. Only then did he roll his eyes and mutter to himself, "Little runt, still thinking of finding your master, still dreaming." Not to mention the original owner of the immortal king's indestructible bell, the sacred angel is most likely dead already, even if not a world-raid artifact in Fang Chen's hands. He'd never return it in your dreams. After dealing with the immortal king's indestructible bell, Fang Chen took out the Heart of Myriad Earth's necklace and pendant. His eyes glowed with excitement. This was the greatest gain from the deal with Kiki. A complete world-grade artifact for free. He took a deep breath and carefully inserted the earthy yellow crystal into the socket of the pendant. With a soft humming sound, layers of earthy yellow radiance bloomed outward. Viewed from above, the radiance looked like petals slowly unfurling, somewhat resembling a lotus throne of the Buddhist sects. Fang Chen reached out and grasped the necklace. In an instant, he actually heard a heavy and powerful heartbeat, the heartbeat of the Middle Earth. Then, more heartbeats surged in, like a tide. There were the heartbeats of the 9 provinces' land, of spirit herbs and animals on the land, and even of humans, demons, and all living beings. All mountains, rivers, plants, and living beings now possessed a heartbeat. Countless heartbeat ripples converged in Fang Chen's mind, slowly coalescing into a 3-dimensional phantom image of the Middle Earth world. No existence could escape his perception, and this perception was merely the beginning. Fang Chen felt that he had become one with the entire Middle Earth world. Wherever his thoughts reached, he could arrive at will, completely breaking free from the constraints of the spatial laws of this realm. With a mere thought, his entire being vanished from the secret chamber into thin air. Far away in the heart of the newly born chaotic origin province, Dongfang Canyu was pouting, her face full of reluctance as she slaughtered swarms of hellish creatures. She grumbled resentfully, "So unfair. Why is everyone else enjoying fine food and drink at the Heavenly Secrets Pavilion, while I'm dragged here to toil like a beast, cleansing the chaotic origin province?" After all, this continent originated from the Hell Realm, and it was covered in dangerous hellish beings and bizarre plants, making it unsuitable for human habitation. Thus, as a member of the Asura race, Dongfang Canyu was dumped here by the great wine priests to shoulder the heavy responsibility of cleansing the chaotic origin province. While she was still complaining, she suddenly noticed the ground before her rapidly bulging, condensing in an instant into a pitch-black humanoid shape. Dongfang Canyu's eyes lit up, and she exclaimed in surprise, "Oh, a rare hellish creature, is it?" She then muttered to herself, "Maybe if I kill it, it'll drop a big treasure." Before her words had even finished, she grabbed her jade paper heavenly book and fiercely slammed it toward the black humanoid's head. But a thunderous umbrella radiating 5-colored lightning light appeared above her head without warning, steadily blocking the jade paper heavenly book. From beneath the umbrella came Fang Chen's annoyed voice, "What treasure do you want? Can't I just give it to you?" Hearing this voice, Dongfang Canyu quickly retracted her jade paper heavenly book and said with surprise, "Ah, it's you. I almost murdered my own husband. Fang Chen withdrew the yin-yang canopy and scolded her with a face full of black lines. Stop spreading obscene rumors about me. He took out an Asura sacred blood and casually tossed it to Dongfang Canyu, saying flatly, take it. Without waiting for her response, Fang Chen once again activated the heart of Myriad Earth, and his figure abruptly vanished. Dongfang Canyu subconsciously cupped the Asura sacred blood, and upon closer inspection, she couldn't help but gasp sharply. She cried out in shock, 100 drops of Asura sacred blood. This is a complete Asura Emperor fortune. Immediately, her face lit up with ecstasy, and she danced with excitement. I really dropped a big treasure. The next moment, within the Heavenly Secrets Pavilion, in LV Zhu's secret chamber. LV Zhu widened her eyes, looking puzzled at the person emerging from the ground. When she recognized it was Fang Chen, she was so frightened that she turned to flee, blurting out in panic, "Why, you wait a moment, I'm not recovered yet." Fang Chen was stunned for a moment before he understood what she meant. He was both annoyed and amused as he pressed down on LV Zhu's shoulder, teasing with this, "You still want to cling to me every day like Yun Shang. You need to build up your strength." He stuffed an Asura sacred blood into LV Zhu's arms and earnestly instructed, "Here, absorb it as soon as possible." Then Fang Chen bent down and gently kissed LV Zhu's snow-white neck, leaving a faint strawberry mark. After that, he teleported back to his own secret chamber. Looking at the heart of Myriad Earth in his hand, its radiance swirling, Fang Chen felt exceptionally excited. With a single thought, he could span vast continents. Such a method was probably unattainable, even for sages at the Three Calamities realm, right? Recalling the last time he was trapped in the Southern Heaven realm, if he had had this necklace in hand, it would have been no problem at all. He could have reached any place in the Southern Heaven realm with a single thought, then easily split the void and leave. This was truly a supreme life-saving treasure. But Fang Chen understood that this was merely an incidental function of the heart of Myriad Earth. Its true ability was to propel an entire world through the void. Of course, limited by his current strength, he could only move small worlds like Middle Earth for now. Fang Chen couldn't help but ponder, what use does this ability have? Creating a world item was exceedingly difficult. What was the purpose of devising such an ability? He thought for a long time, but couldn't figure out what significance moving a world could possibly have. Fang Chen shook his head, put away the heart of Myriad Earth, and instead closed his eyes to meditate on the great derivation sword array. About 2 hours later, his eyes snapped open abruptly. Between every strand of hair and fine hair, sharp sword Kai involuntarily burst forth. His gaze was like an unsheathed sharp sword, stabbing into the surrounding space and causing it to ripple. Fang Chen let out a long breath and whispered, "This heaven, raid cultivation method I acquired back in the nascent soul stage has finally reached full completion." Anticipation flickered in his eyes. Now that the 9 swords are assembled, with 1 being a quays, a world item and 8 being supreme, grade spiritual weapons, they far exceed the original requirements for the sword array's spirit sword quality. When the sword array is fully activated, I wonder how powerful it will be. At that moment, the sky curtain of the Middle Earth world suddenly heaved violently. A strange fluctuation, imperceptible to the naked eye, instantly radiated over from the direction of the distant chaotic origin province. Wherever the fluctuation passed, the sky curtain trembled greatly, and the earth shook. A vast pressure, exclusive to sages, blanketed the 8 directions, causing all powerhouses below the spirit-severing realm to panic, feeling as insignificant as ants before the heavens. Fang Chen sensed something and flew out of the secret chamber, gazing into the distance with hints of joy in his eyes. He said happily, Dongfang Canyu, or rather, the Purple Soul Sage, has stepped into the Asura Emperor realm. The Asura Emperor fortune from the Hell realm is indeed effective. At this critical juncture of the expedition to the Heaven realm, having Middle Earth gain another sage-level combatant was truly a tremendous joyous event. Unfortunately, among the Asura race in Middle Earth, only LV Zhu and Dongfang Canyu had reached the 5 Crown King realm. Otherwise, he could continue replicating Asura sacred blood to foster more Asura emperors. Only the sharp sounds of tearing through the air could be heard as the Great Dream Demon Lord and 10 extraterrestrial sages appeared one after another, all gazing toward the chaotic origin province. The attainment of sagehood was a once-seen, a millennium grand event even in their worlds, and all sages from various paths would come to offer congratulations. After all, in an era where saints do not emerge, sages were the supreme combat power of a world. Their strength fundamentally determined the rise and fall of a world. The Ice Realm sage gently stroked his beard and asked Fang Chen, "Little friend Fang, a sage has been born in your esteemed realm, aren't you going to offer congratulations?" Normally, the sages of Middle-earth should have sensed the birth of the new Asura Emperor by now and were hurrying to the chaotic origin province. But Fang Chen clasped his hands behind his back and calmly uttered 3 words, "It's too late." The 10 extraterrestrial sages were immediately baffled. Too late? What did that mean? As they were bewildered, a black light suddenly shot up from Enraged's secret chamber, piercing straight through the clouds. Fang Chen looked toward the end of the black light and couldn't help but narrow his eyes slightly. Deep within the sky curtain, an utterly dark abyss slowly inverted and descended. Within the abyss, there seemed to be something that instilled fear deep within the soul, prowling about. Suddenly, 9 enormous eyes emerged within the abyss, each flickering with a distinctly different color. It was as if a colossal beast slumbering in the abyss had awakened. The 9 eyes slowly rotated, overlooking heaven and earth, as if searching for the trace of the breakthrough. Soon, the 9 eyes locked onto Enraged. One of the white eyes suddenly split open, gushing out countless white threads. A slender white thread drifted down leisurely. Within that thread lay a cryptic power that made even spirit-severing powerhouses feel suffocated. As if, in the unseen, it bound people and all things under the heavens together. And this was precisely the causal power that only an Asura Emperor possessed. The white thread followed the black light down, directly plunging into Enraged's secret chamber. In the next instant, an Asura Emperor aura that made all living beings tremble erupted violently like a breached dam. The entire heavenly secrets pavilion shook fiercely, and everyone in seclusion was startled, soaring into the air one after another. Immediately, the sky curtain quaked mightily, and the earth rumbled. The mighty presence of the Asura Emperor formed layered ripples, radiating into the distance. With a loud bang, Hongxiu and the 10 Asura Emperors, who had been hiding their auras, suddenly burst out of their secret chambers and emerged together. The usually composed and unruffled Hongxiu now stared intently at Enraged's secret chamber, her eyes filled with disbelief. When the Asura Emperor was born in the chaotic origin province, she had remained calm. She could guess that the one who had broken through was likely the Middle-earth expert who had occupied Dongfang Canyu's body. With the cultivation of a 5, Crown King, combined with a drop of sacred Asura blood, attaining the position of Asura Emperor is indeed a natural, effortless matter, nothing to be surprised about. But what she never expected was that, within the Heaven's Mystery Pavilion, yet another person would attain the Asura Emperor realm. Even more shocking to her, the one who broke through was none other than her younger sister, Luzhu. The 10 Asura Emperors behind Hongxiu let out simultaneous exclamations of shock. How is this possible? There is only one Asura Emperor opportunity. Why would 2 Asura Emperors break through? And also, where did the Central Plains get a second 5, Crown King? The 10 otherworldly sages were equally astonished. 2 Asura Emperors in a single day. This is a spectacle that only the 4 great realms might witness. We originally thought that the Central Plains would not see a surge of sages until after completing the trade with us, but to think. In the end, we underestimated the hidden depths of the Central Plains. More than underestimated, Heaven's Mystery Pavilion actually concealed 11 Asura Emperors. Their sudden appearance gave me quite a fright. Thankfully, we harbored no ill intentions, or we would have suffered a great loss. Each of the 10 otherworldly sages was filled with awe and vigilance. They had thought that Heaven's Mystery Pavilion was nothing more than an utterly ordinary small sect, who would have known it was a hidden deep sea giant crocodile. They had no choice but to reassess Fang Chen and the strength of Heaven's Mystery Pavilion. The massive upheaval of heaven and earth lasted a full 30 breaths. As the aura slowly dispersed, a petite young maiden with long silver hair emerged, none other than the newly ascended Luzhu. Above her head swirled a vortex as solid as substance, like a manifested crown, symbolizing the entirely new cultivation, Realm 1, Hill Asura Emperor. Luzhu looked down at her own hands, dazed and bewildered, feeling as if she were in a dream. Just a month ago, she was still a minor 2, Crown Asura King subjugated by the Black Sun King and mercilessly exiled by her tribe. At that time, the future was utterly bleak, and fate itself seemed destined to lead her to a tragic end. Yet now, a mere month later, she had already ascended to the Asura Emperor realm. In the former 9 Asura tribes, she would be fully qualified to serve as a tribe lord, standing as a peak powerhouse overlooking all 9 tribes. And the one who gave her all of this, no, it should be said the one who bestowed everything upon her, was Fang Chen. Whether it was the Hell Abyss crystals that caused her cultivation to continuously skyrocket, the retrieval of the soul that the Black Sun King had held captive, or the Asura Emperor, or breakthrough opportunity granted today without exception, all were gifts from Fang Chen. Fang Chen had completely and utterly rewritten her destiny. With that thought, Luzhu abruptly raised her head to look at Fang Chen, her eyes brimming with tearful gratitude. Unable to contain her surging emotions any longer, she silently lunged toward him and summoned all her strength to cry out, "Husband." This call came from the depths of her heart. She was desperate to give him everything she possessed and spend the rest of her life repaying him. Fang Chen also broke into a smile and habitually stretched out his arms to securely catch her in a firm embrace. But at the very instant of contact, an unimaginably terrifying force erupted from Luzhu's body, instantly blasting Fang Chen violently backward. Fang Chen felt his internal organs violently churning, his entire body tingling and numb, as he was hurled uncontrollably like a cannonball straight into the crowd of Asura emperors behind him. Just as a severe injury seemed inevitable, Hongxiu calmly extended a snow-white palm, gently pressing it against Fang Chen's back and silently dissipating the rampaging force into nothingness. Still shaken, Fang Chen could only smile bitterly and activate his second domain to heal himself, muttering self-deprecatingly, "I nearly got killed by my own wife." He had indeed been far too rash this time, completely forgetting that Luzhu had just broken through to Asura Emperor, and her terrifying inner power was still far from being under conscious control, thus causing such a blunder. Hongxiu shot him a glance and said indifferently, "You brought this upon yourself." Yeah. Fang Chen was slightly taken aback and, somewhat puzzled, turned to look at King Jiu, vaguely sensing that there was an ineffable hint of resentment hidden in King Jiu's words. He immediately cupped his hands solemnly and said, "Thank you for saving me." Hongxiu slowly withdrew her palm, her face still betraying no emotion, and replied indifferently, "There are so many sages here. Even without me, someone else would have saved you. Naturally, there's no need to thank me." Husband, I'm sorry. Luzhu hurried over, but was so frightened that she dared not come any closer, her whole mind in a daze. She too had been utterly terrified by her own earlier lunge. Just a single unintentional pounce had nearly cost Fang Chen his life. Seeing this, Fang Chen didn't know whether to laugh or cry, but how could he bear to blame her? He reached out, gently stroked her head and softly comforted her. "It's fine. Just consolidate your realm and it will be all right." Feeling both grateful and ashamed, Luzhu nodded repeatedly and promised, "All right, I'll go into seclusion right after this." She hesitated, then shyly turned her face away and lowered her voice. "From now on, I won't be afraid of you anymore. Even if it's for days and nights, I won't be afraid." With the body of an Asura emperor, did she still need to fear Fang Chen's vigorous efforts? Even if entangled for a whole month, there would absolutely be no problem. Fang Chen merely smiled. Days and nights were nothing but routine for him. However, when these words reached Hongxiu's ears, she couldn't help but tremble slightly. "What?" A single day is not even Fang Chen's limit. His maximum can actually last for days and nights. An inexplicable panic welled up in her heart. She coldly glared at Fang Chen and Luzhu, then turned and went straight back into her private chamber. After she calmed down, the coldness in her eyes gradually turned into a complex, unreadable expression. The younger sister she had once regarded as waste, with Fang Chen's help, had now actually reached the same height as her. And her future achievements might even far surpass hers. Through the cracks in the stone wall, she secretly watched Fang Chen and Luzhu laughing and talking together, and in her heart that had always remained calm, a surge of envy uncontrollably arose. Or rather, it was clearly a faint, aching jealousy. Not long after, the heavens and earth of taking Great Prefecture were shaken once more. Dongfang Canyu and all the sages of the Central Plains gathered and rushed to Heaven's Mystery Pavilion. Cold Moon Sage, Thunder Annihilation Sage, and the others quickly entered the scene, glancing around before swiftly spotting Luzhu. They all more or less recognized this little Asura wife, who was often by Fang Chen's side. Now seeing that even she had successfully broken through to become an Asura emperor, everyone was amazed and cupped their hands in congratulations. "Congratulations, fellow Taoist Luzhu." Luzhu hurriedly bowed politely, her tone extremely modest. "Fellow Taoists of the Central Plains, there is no need for such courtesy. I merely relied on my husband's good fortune to obtain this break through opportunity." Dongfang Canyu also bounced out and chimed cheerfully. I also broke through to Asura Emperor thanks to Fang Chen, my husband, He Tilda. Upon hearing this, the multitude of sages, including Grand Dream Demon Sovereign, all showed expressions of shock and turned their gazes simultaneously toward Fang Chen. He alone, in a single day, had consecutively forged 2 Asura Emperors. Such a feat, they themselves admitted they didn't have the slightest confidence in achieving it. Recalling Fang Chen's unfathomably powerful combat prowess during the great battle with the young emperor in the void, everyone's hearts were filled with newfound respect. At this point, whoever still dared to regard Fang Chen as merely a deity transformation cultivator must be truly blind. The Grand Libationer of Taking Great Prefecture stroked his beard and laughed loudly. With the expedition to the heavenly realm imminent, our central planes have gained 2 more sage-level combatants. This is clearly the will of heaven. He looked around and declared solemnly, since all of us sages are gathered at Heaven's Mystery Pavilion, let the great strategy for the expedition to the heavenly realm be settled. Here in this very pavilion. The eyes of the various sages all revealed astonishment. The expedition to the heavenly realm was the most historically significant event in the entire Central Plains, without exception. Logically, it should have been solemnly decided at the heart of the Central Plains. Yet the Grand Libationer now changed the venue to Heaven's Mystery Pavilion. The implications of this were profoundly significant. A few sages exchanged glances. 9 Nether Demon Sovereign, Heavenly Craftsman Sage, and Fang Chen First, rank Pavilion Master, naturally had no objections. Everyone's gaze then turned to the 4 venerables of the Heavenly Prefecture. Ancient Zen Buddhist Lord's expression remained as unruffled as ever, but the faces of the 3 sages Thunder Annihilation, Cold Moon, and Traceless all revealed a trace of UI's disappointment. From today onward, will the heart of the Central Plains quietly shift from Tianju to the Taking Great State. Wuhan Sage quietly observed the 2 female Asura Emperors flanking Fang Chen, and the Fang Chen First drank Pavilion Lord, then counted the 10 otherworldly sages Fang Chen had borrowed. Wed and couldn't help but sigh softly. Although I had a premonition this day would come, I never expected it to arrive so swiftly. Lamy Sage smiled bitterly and shook his head. If the young emperor were still alive, I'm afraid we would inevitably have to compete with him. Cold Moon Sage of the Moon Palace sighed softly. The sky over Zhongzhou is truly about to change color. Everyone looked at Fang Chen with complicated expressions, their hearts brimming with a myriad of emotions. Now, the emergence of these 2 Asura Emperors was merely the beginning. In the future, after Fang Chen fulfills his agreements one by one with the 10 otherworldly sages and Jian Qingmei of the Martial Repository, opportunities would successively arise for over 20 sages, Asura Emperors, and Demon Venerables. And these opportunities would naturally prioritize the martial artists of the Taking Great State. By that time, the number of sages in the Taking Great State will climb to an utterly staggering level. The Grand Libationer of the Taking Great State, seeing no objections, immediately announced in a deep voice, since none of you have any objections, then notify the deity transformation and nascent soul cultivators of each state to reroute to the Tianji Pavilion. He reissued the decree to the powerhouses of all the Central Plains, and when he turned his gaze toward Fang Chen, it was filled with deep relief and gratification. If he told these otherworldly sages before him that this Fang Chen, who single-handedly reshaped the structure of the 9 provinces of the Central Plains and rewrote the eternal destiny of the Central Plains, had been nothing more than a nameless junior just over a year ago, would they even believe it? Fang Chen did not remain idle, taking advantage of the gap before the nascent soul and deity transformation armies from each state arrived. He instantly teleported into the present of the 10 senior otherworldly sages. He cupped his hands in salute, performing a solemn bow, and declared in a clear voice, "Everyone, if this battle ends in complete victory, I, as the junior, shall definitely honor our prior agreement." The 10 sages, seeing this, also solemnly clasped their hands and returned the salute. "Fellow Taoist Fang, you are too polite." After witnessing his series of heaven, defying feats with their own eyes, who would dare to look down on him even slightly now? Afterward, Fang Chen turned around and looked directly at the Great Dream Demon Venerable. At that moment, the Great Dream Demon Venerable was also staring unblinkingly at Fang Chen and spoke in a deep voice, "Kid, it's time you gave me an explanation." He was still waiting for Fang Chen to release Liu Baianhuan. Fang Chen's expression turned solemn as he gazed at the other party and said slowly, "I will release your young master, but I have a condition." The Great Dream Demon Venerable, as if having long expected this, immediately snorted coldly, "Don't expect me to be your hired thug. I won't get involved in the entanglements between the Central Plains and the Southern Heaven realm. Only when the 9 Grand Libationers of the Central Plains join forces can they match a 9, Sun Giant Emperor. But besides the 9, Sun Giant Emperor, the Southern Heaven realm is also infested with the legendary 9 Hells Asura Emperor. Fang Chen was clearly trying to make him confront that 9 Hells Asura Emperor. He would absolutely never undertake such a perilous task. Who would have thought that Fang Chen, hearing this, was not angered, but instead smiled faintly. I don't need you to be a hired thug. With a steady gaze, he enunciated every word. I only need you to save me when I encounter irresistible mortal peril. After a brief pause, his tone became even more resolute. If I survive, after the Great War ends, I will unconditionally release your son. But if I am unfortunate enough to die, then before death, I will definitely take your son with me on the road. What do you say? Fang Chen wouldn't dare rest easy leaving the 9 Hells, Asura Emperor, to the Great Dream Demon Venerable, just like that. This old fox had used illusion techniques to harm him and the 9 Nether Demon Venerable in the void. That had just happened recently. This person was only suitable for temporary use, and even then, one must always be on guard against him. Is that all? The Great Dream Demon Venerable's expression eased slightly, and he pondered, this condition is barely worth considering. He then fixed his gaze on Fang Chen again and added, however, if the Chaos Ancient Blood Marquis appears, you'd better not expect me to step forward for you. Fang Chen nodded without hesitation. Of course, I would never put you in too difficult a position. Seeing Fang Chen successfully pull in yet another demon venerable of the 3 Calamities realm, the eyes of the Central Plains sages present lit up with unconcealable joy, and even Rayon's confidence doubled. If this war truly kicks off on a grand scale, the Central Plains side's chances of victory will increase by an additional 30%. Young friend Fang, I wonder if the attack on the Southern Heaven realm could include a share from my Myriad Poison realm. Right at that moment, the sage of the Myriad Poison realm came forward with Zhang Yishan. His figure was aged and gaunt, and a layer of extremely dangerous poisonous mist swirled around him. Fang Chen couldn't help but secretly rejoice in his heart. Having an extra sage to assist, why not be happy about that? Moreover, this was a sage exceptionally skilled in poison. The giant emperors have tough hides near impervious to myriad arts, yet only potent poison can produce an unexpected effect on them. With this senior joining in, it was naturally the icing on the cake. Nothing could be better. However, Fang Chen still raised an eyebrow slightly and asked doubtfully, Senior, your Myriad Poison realm shouldn't need to lease a Truce Steel, right? After all, Jian Yishan had already returned alive from the wilderness ancient hunting grounds. By rights, those ancient giants should have long since retreated. The old man coughed lightly and said slowly, that is indeed the case. As he spoke, he yanked Jian Yishan over from his side and explained, to tell the truth, it's this junior of mine. Ever since he witnessed the poison body you refined with his own eyes, he's been thinking about it day and night, utterly baffled. According to the true scripture of poison origin I passed down, one should only be able to refine a poison body at the level of 4 decays of the celestial being, yet you managed to refine one at the 5 decays level. This child has been racking his brains over this, almost reaching the point of cultivation deviation, so he begged me incessantly to bring him to you for guidance. Jiang Yishan immediately protested upon hearing this, and was about to retort, clearly it's you, old O. Before he finished speaking, he suddenly let out a piercing scream of pain. No one saw when the Poison Realm sage made his move. A pitch-black poison centipede was already crawling on Jiang Yishan's back. The 2 huge pincers of the centipede were viciously burrowing deep into his flesh. The Poison Realm sage watched him with a beaming smile, his tone gentle yet laced with threat. Yishan, yearning for the great Tao is nothing to be ashamed of. As a cultivator, you must be brave enough to face your shortcomings and humbly seek guidance from others. You must not conceal your ailments and avoid treatment. Do you understand my meaning? As soon as his words fell, the poison centipede abruptly released its iron grip. Jiang Yishan's face was deathly pale from pain. It took him a long while to recover, and at this moment he could only curse inwardly. It was clearly you, old bastard, who itched to ask, yet you used me as a scapegoat. Hearing this, Fang Chen finally understood, so it's about that matter. He immediately confessed openly, I indeed refined the poison body strictly following the true scripture of poison origin. It's just that during the refining process, I additionally used a cursed sun wheel of a 2, Sun Giant Emperor. Oh. The Poison Realm Sage immediately revealed an expression of sudden realization. This reason he had actually vaguely guessed before.
Right.
After a second thought, a deeper doubt surged in his heart. Then may I ask, young friend Fang, who taught you that copy of the true scripture of poison origin? Fang Chen very naturally pointed at Jian Qingmei, who was still grimacing beside him. It was just him who gave it to me. The Poison Realm Sage was completely stunned and asked incredulously, "You mean you received the true scripture of poison origin just a month ago, and you've already fully comprehended it?" Hearing this, Fang Chen subconsciously stroked his chin, thinking back very seriously, then asked back with a puzzled expression, "This poison scripture, is it really that difficult to comprehend?"
Aye.
The Poison Realm Sage was rooted to the spot, his throat as if choked by something, unable to utter a single word for a long while. The profound principles of the poison path he had accumulated through a lifetime of blood and sweat had actually been effortlessly comprehended by someone in just one short month. After a long while, he finally managed to gather his wits, and with a tentative tone, asked with difficulty, "During your comprehension, was there truly not even the slightest snag?" Fang Chen carefully recalled again, then nodded and said, "Speaking of snags, there was indeed a tiny one." He added very sincerely, "This scripture is simply too thick. Merely flipping through it took up quite a bit of my time."
PFFD.
The Poison Realm Sage felt his internal organs churning violently, his blood rushing straight to his crown. So the supreme poison Tao he had taken pride in all his life was, in the other's eyes, actually simpler than just flipping through a book. Watching the senior wear an expression as though he had swallowed a dead fly, Jian Qingmei beside him felt an indescribable secret delight. In his heart he laughed madly. "Ha ha 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 ha, old fellow, I told you long ago that this guy Fang Chen is a complete freak, but you wouldn't believe it, and shame on Sly insisted on joining in the fun. Now look at you, your Tao heart nearly shattered by a single sentence, right? Ha 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 ha." Fang Chen looked at the extremely complicated expression on the Poison Realm Sage's face, and with some concern, he said in astonishment, "Senior, are you all right?" The Poison Realm Sage quickly waved his hand, then straightened his chest with effort, forcing calm, and said, "How could I be unwell? Even if something were wrong, it would be that brat Jian Qingmei who's in trouble." Having said that, he secretly stimulated the poisonous centipede, and its two pincers, drenched in potent venom, once again plunged fiercely into Jian Qingmei's flesh. The very next moment, Jian Qingmei, who was still inwardly gloating and snickering, suddenly convulsed violently all over, then foamed at the mouth and collapsed on the spot, dead unconscious. The Poison Realm Sage glanced down, then clicked his tongue, sighed with regret. Tusk, see, I told you this kid's mental fortitude is too fragile. Look, his Tao heart shattered in an instant." Fang Chen watched Jian Qingmei, still convulsing unconsciously on the ground, and couldn't help but show a look of astonishment. So, the so-called shattering of the Tao heart actually manifests externally as foaming at the mouth. Fang Chen couldn't help but remind, Senior, do you really not need to give him some first aid? He looks like he's about to die." The Poison Realm Sage waved his hand with perfect ease. No need. Young people, they just drop down and sleep. It's perfectly normal, nothing to fuss about." He paused slightly, a shrewd light flickering in his eyes, and changed the subject. "Young friend Fang, I'll speak frankly. I am the true originator of that poison origin true scripture." Fang Chen's face instantly filled with surprise. He immediately cupped his hands and bowed, saying with admiration, "So it was Senior who authored this scripture. I was truly remiss just now." The Poison Realm Sage gazed at him with burning eyes and said solemnly, "Little friend, your comprehension is truly transcendent. I hold in my hands a heaven, sent great opportunity, and I very much wish to cooperate with you. I just don't know if you are interested in it." Fang Chen's interest was simply immense. Back when he first saw the method for refining the poison body within the poison origin true scripture, he had already been utterly astonished, regarding it as divine. After all, ordinary people would only feel a tremendous headache when faced with the terrifying blood, rebirth ability of the ancient giant. And yet, the sage before him actually dared to harness this trait with unbridled creativity to refine the poison body. And most importantly, he actually succeeded. Fang Chen was filled with immense curiosity about what this senior intended to do next. Stroking his beard lightly, the Poison Realm Sage slowly laid out his grand blueprint. "To be honest, when I initially designed the poison body method, the ultimate goal in my T was to forcibly create a poison body with saint-level power in this era, where saints do not emerge. Nowadays, the Tao slaves dominate and suppress the myriad heavens and hundreds of realms, causing all saints to perish. If a saint-level poison body were to truly emerge, wouldn't it then dominate all the heavens and realms, achieving true invincibility in the world? Just by hearing this first sentence, Fang Chen was deeply shaken by the other's insane conception. This senior's audacity was simply too great. Moreover, upon careful scrutiny, this plan might not be unfeasible. The poison body itself is an empty shell without self-awareness. Even if its power reached saint level, it would at most count as a saint-level corpse. The Tao slaves would absolutely not descend to suppress it because of this. This method perfectly evades the surveillance and suppression of the Tao slaves. A saint-level power that can walk freely in this era, unfettered by any restrictions. What it signifies is utterly self-evident. The Poison Realm sage immediately added, according to my original conception, after successfully refining a divine transformation stage poison body, I would still need to create a special cultivation technique that allows this poison body to cultivate on its own. If given enough time, this poison body would, just like us living beings, eventually step into the legendary Saint Realm through cultivation. Unfortunately, my comprehension is ultimately limited. I spent a full millennium yet still failed to conceive the most exquisite technique that would enable the poison body to cultivate itself. Young friend Fang, would you be willing to accompany me to the myriad poison realm and jointly fathom this supreme method? If this matter can indeed be accomplished, I will surely bestow upon you afterwards a crucial treasure that the central plains most urgently need at present.
Oh?
Fang Chen's heart suddenly stirred. The most urgently needed treasure for the central plains at this moment. Though a flicker of doubt flashed through his mind, he agreed on the spot without hesitation. Since Senior values me so highly, if this battle in the heavenly realm ends in complete victory, I will certainly set aside time to personally go to the myriad poison realm and give it a try. Hearing this, the poison realm sage finally showed a gratified smile. He reached into his robe and pulled out an entirely pitch black token, on which the two characters heavenly poison were boldly inscribed. This is the unique token of my heavenly poison palace. When the time comes, simply holding this token will allow you unhindered passage straight into the heavenly poison palace, the core of my myriad poison realm. Fang Chen accepted the token with both hands respectfully and said solemnly, I have noted it, thank you, Senior. Whoosh, whoosh, whoosh. Just as he put away the token, countless extremely powerful auras suddenly surged out from the teleportation array in the underground palace one after another. He saw group after group of divine transformation experts from various states arriving in succession. The four familiar top tier powerhouses Golden Scale Great Exalt, Myriad Weapons Great Exalt, Starry Mountain Lord, and Ice Heart Great Exalt immediately entered his line of sight. Deputy Palace Master Yu of Dan Province, Red Dust Venerable of the Great Wilderness Province, and the only remaining Purple Firmament Venerable of Hunyuan Province, among others, all arrived. Besides that, Fang Chen also spotted Bai Xin, whom he hadn't seen for a long time, among the crowd. At this moment, behind Bai Xin's head, a special divine halo glowed with white light, and upon that halo, two blazing flame marks were clearly imprinted. This scene greatly surprised Fang Chen. Bai Xin had broken through to the divine transformation realm not long ago, right? She actually reached the realm of 2 decays of heavenly human in such a short time. In contrast, the 6 paths superior beside her remained stuck at the 7 apertures nascent soul stage with no sign of breakthrough. Fang Chen looked at 6 paths superior, and a trace of complex emotion involuntarily appeared in his eyes. Actually, it was not that his aptitude was insufficient, nor that Bai Xin was unwilling to give him cultivation resources, but that he simply did not dare step into the 8th aperture. 6 paths superior's sole lifelong wish had been to find his daughter. Now that this obsession had been fulfilled, he had long lost any goal to pursue, and could no longer find the Tao that could support him moving forward. If he forcibly advanced to the 8 apertures nascent soul stage, he would likely get lost in endless illusions and descend into complete madness. He was truly afraid that in his madness he might do something irredeemably terrible that would disappoint Bai Xin, so he would rather suppress his cultivation firmly at the 7 apertures nascent soul stage. In these fleeting final moments, I will accompany my daughter quietly through this last stretch.
Alas.
Fang Chen sighed silently deep within his heart, not knowing what to say. At that very moment, he suddenly sensed an extraordinarily unique domain aura and involuntarily raised his eyes to gaze in the direction of that sensation. There, beside the mountain Lord of the Stars, stood a beautiful woman in a long cyan dress. Her beauty was stunning enough to captivate the world, yet between her brows lingered an ever-present, unbreakable melancholy. This woman was none other than Liu Ruyan. Just as the Mountain Lord of the Stars had promised, the path for Liu Ruyan to break through to the divine transformation realm had been thoroughly paved, without any remaining obstacles. She had successfully achieved divine transformation. Moreover, the domain she had condensed was one of the rarest in this world, the Tao of Time. As if sensing Fang Chen's gaze, Liu Ruyan also looked up. After a brief moment of eye contact, she silently averted her gaze elsewhere. In those captivating eyes, one could discern neither joy nor sorrow. Seeing this, Fang Chen could not help but smile with relief. Liu Ruyan had finally grown strong on her own strength. The four who had walked out of that small, lonely boat city together back, then he himself, Fang Chen, Liu Ruxu, Chen Xiling, and the Liu Ruyan before him, had actually all followed their respective fates to such astonishing heights. This feeling was truly wonderful. After all the divine transformation, great powers had arrived at the underground palace. Only then did Sage Lang Yu take out over 50 great pills radiating immense medicinal power and declared loudly, "These are the great pills that Venerable Starfire entrusted to T, his sage, to personally refine. The efficacy of this pill is sufficient to allow a cultivator at the first celestial decline to forcibly break through to the second celestial decline. Now, let Venerable Starfire handle the distribution." As his words fell, he swept his sleeve, and the 50+ precious great pills flew steadily before Fang Chen. All the divine transformation cultivators present had blazing hot gazes, revealing barely concealable fervor and yearning. Especially those elders of the first celestial decline, the anticipation in their hearts was so intense it nearly overflowed. Resources for the divine transformation realm in the entire central Earth world were simply too scarce. The fate of the vast majority of divine transformation cultivators was to be ruthlessly stuck at the bottleneck of the first celestial decline, ultimately passing away alone in seed-ted meditation. Only an exceedingly small number of peerless geniuses had the chance to assault the next higher realm. And now, Fang Chen actually held over 50 great pills in his hands. Fang Chen made a grasping motion in the air, separating out 10 great pills and carefully, properly stored them away. These were specially prepared for a few friends around him who had just advanced to divine transformation. He would gift them one by one once their cultivation was fully consolidated in the future. As for the remaining 40, under the gaze of burning, eager eyes, Fang Chen loudly declared, "These 40 great pills shall be distributed in order, according to the meritorious deeds list from the ancient Titan War." Although many divine transformation cultivators were not recorded on the 9 divine merit steels, there was still an overall merit list that included all participants of the war. Upon hearing this, the Grand Libationer of Taking Province immediately produced a pre-prepared list and volunteered, "Allow me to handle the distribution." As his words fell, those divine transformation cultivators who had fought desperately and faced death fearlessly burst into cheers that soared straight into the heavens. Sage of the Poison Realm stood in the distance, his face full of emotion, and sincerely praised, "These are a full 40 great pills, each worth immeasurable value. And Fang Chen is so selfless as to distribute them all to everyone." The various sages, suspended beyond the firmament, also felt an indescribable, inexplicable complexity in their hearts. This atmosphere of unity and unreserved dedication in the central Earth world was truly enviable. These older generation figures, each sacrificing themselves selflessly, fighting bloody battles to carve out a blood-stained path forward for the younger generation, and those juniors likewise bearing the entirety of the central Earth in their hearts, brimming with vigor, united as one. With generation after generation of such heroes stepping forward, how could the central Earth not prosper greatly? Once all 40 great pills had been distributed, those 40 divine transformation powerhouses did not hesitate one bit. They sat cross-legged on the spot, swallowed their pills in one gulp, and began to break through right there. In an instant, one after another, powerful auras of the second celestial decline erupted in succession, creating an incredibly shocking scene. Amid this continuous wave of breakthroughs, the nascent soul armies from the various provinces also gradually arrived at the Heavenly Secrets Pavilion. Inside and outside the Heavenly Secrets Pavilion, a mighty force of over 10,000 soldiers was assembled in a flash. Looking out, a vast sea of people stretched as far as the eye could see, banners fluttering, a truly magnificent spectacle. This army had successively experienced the brutal ancient Titan War and the Hell War, and every person was soaked in an iron-blooded killing aura of countless battles survived. They held their heads high and chests out, their imposing spirit like a rainbow, their sharpness piercing the heavens. That rebellious fighting spirit that dared to battle the heavens and earth and never bow to destiny was like an invisible sharp sword, fiercely stabbing through the firmament. Many sages beyond the sky, witnessing this scene, could not help but be collectively moved. Though they were merely nascent soul cultivators, the aura they condensed was so chillingly fierce and resolute that even the sages felt a jolt of shock. The sage of the Ice Realm was deeply stirred by this spirit and blurted out, with such spirit, it would be difficult for the Central Earth not to win. The other sages also solemnly nodded in agreement. Originally, they had not held much hope for the Central Earth's plan to attack the Southern Celestial Realm. But now, looking at this iron-willed Central Earth army before them, a thought suddenly arose in their hearts: the Central Earth might truly achieve an unparalleled victory that would shake all the realms and 100 worlds. Fang Chen, being among them personally, was even more deeply infected by this fervent spirit. He took a deep breath, steadied his mind, and turned to the Grand Libationer. Grand Libationer, all preparations are in order. Shall we begin discussing the specific matters of the campaign? In truth, the current situation required little further discussion. Excluding the 11 Shura kings like Qingjiu he had secretly hidden, and the 100 archangels, the existing forces were already sufficient to deal with the Southern Celestial Realm. However, the Grand Libationer suddenly raised his hand, looked towards the depths of the azure void, and said slowly, "Wait a moment longer." He paused, then added, "A truly heavyweight guest is, at this moment, returning from the source of all evils."
What?
A flash of undisguisable surprise instantly passed through Fang Chen's eyes, while many divine transformation powerhouses' faces lit up with joy in an instant. If even the Grand Libationer so solemnly called them heavyweight, they must be an existence of immense power. Seeing this, Sage Leng Yu of the Moon Palace smiled at the corner of his mouth and proactively explained, "How could we sages let Venerable Starfire be the only one running around and striving? We too have exhausted all means to contact sage friends and old acquaintances we're familiar with." Only then did Fang Chen suddenly recall that when the plan to counterattack the Heavenly Realm was announced that day, several sages indeed said they would try their best to draw in powerful reinforcements at the sage level to aid the battle. Sage Leng Yu continued, "Our Moon Palace has successfully contacted a Central Earth sage who departed a millennium ago. He has great ties to our Moon Palace and is willing to set aside his precious time and rush back from the source of all evils, specifically to assist." Fang Chen's anticipation instantly piqued as he pressed, "Dare I ask, Sage, what realm is this senior at now?" Sage Leng Yu nodded his chin slightly and slowly uttered 3 words, "The Three Calamities realm."
Yes.
As his words fell, a chorus of sharp intakes of breath swept through the scene, followed by low, voiced but barely containable excited discussions. Fang Chen also let out a long breath of relief, his heart finally settling. This time, the counterattack on the Heavenly Realm was a sure thing. He lifted his head full of anticipation, his gaze tightly fixed on that boundless, infinite firmament. After waiting for roughly several hours, the sky canopy of the Central Earth world suddenly shook violently without warning, as if something extremely terrifying was rapidly approaching. With a loud, tooth-grating crack, the sky canopy was violently torn open, revealing an unimaginably enormous rift. A blinding fiery, red sun, piercingly brilliant, suddenly burst from the rift with myriad rays, flooding heaven and earth in dazzling luminance as it descended in majesty upon the central plains. Immediately thereafter, chains woven purely from the force of fiery, red law descended from the void's depths, clanking as they intertwined and spread, instantly forming a skyward staircase that linked the void to the boundless earth. When the blazing radiance of that fiery, red sun, like luminance, gradually subsided, the venerable elder of the central plains at last revealed her true form. She was a woman, clad in a fiery, red, streamlined battle armor, a resplendent fiery, red phoenix crown upon her head, and a level long saber of the same fiery hue casual lie tucked at her waist. Though a woman, her imposing aura was not the least bit inferior to any man in the world. She descended along the staircase woven from law chains, her steps appearing unhurried, yet her speed was terrifyingly swift. In the blink of an eye, she was already above the heaves in Lai's secret pavilion. Only now did the crowd barely manage to make out her features. Her face was as round as a full moon, with exquisitely refined features. It was obvious that in her youth, she must have been an unmatched celestial fairy of captivating grace. Now, though she seemed around 40 years of age, she still retained a measure of alluring beauty. Her arrogant, slightly fierce phoenix eyes that seemed to disdain the world slowly swept the surroundings, and a voice tinged with weariness asked, "Is this land the heaven seat? Continent a mere millennium has passed, and it's already transformed beyond all recognition. The 9 Grand Libationers stepped forward in unison and replied as one, "Great Sage Feng Kao, you misunderstand. This is not the Heaven Continent, but the Taking Grand Continent." Great Sage Feng Kao's slender eyebrows arched sharply, her tone carrying a barely perceptible displeasure. Why assemble in Taking Grand Continent instead of Heaven Continent? Could it be that Heaven Continent is no longer worthy? The Grand Libationer's face still held a smile as he explained, neither humbly nor arrogantly, where we meet is all the same, why would Great Sage Feng Kao mind such details? A trace of faint impatience and displeasure flickered in Great Sage Feng Kao's eyes. She scanned the crowd once more, her brows furrowing deeper, and judged, "You of the Central Plains have truly declined. In a full 1,000 years, you've only produced 2 native sages. With such a meager foundation, did you rely on luck to win the ancient giant war?" Fang Chen's brows gradually furrowed as well. He had originally thought that only a figure like Great Sage Zunshan would not regard the Central Plains as his homeland. But he never imagined that Great Sage Zunshan was far from an exception. This Great Sage Feng Kao before him, every you of the Central Plains, she uttered. Her tone and manner perfectly mirrored those of Great Sage Zunshan back then. Could it be that these sages, after 1,000 years away from the Central Plains, had gradually changed their hearts and truly no longer considered this world their own? And recalling how, during the ancient giant war when the Central Plains was in such mortal peril, not a single sage had taken the initiative to return and lend aid, he had previously assumed these sages were firmly entangled by affairs in the wellspring of myriad evils, unable to break free. Yet the successive returns of Great Sage Zunshan and Great Sage Feng Kao forced a chilling suspicion to arise unbidden in Fang Chen's heart. Had the Central Plains truly been heartlessly abandoned by them? Why had it come to this? Clearly, during the Golden Era 1,000 years ago, these sages had also risked life and limb, shedding their blood for the Central Plains. Why, after venturing to the wellspring of myriad evils, had they all changed so utterly? Now, hearing Great Sage Feng Kao's accusation, Fang Chen found it all the more absurd and laughable. Wasn't the very reason the Central Plains hadn't birthed new sages in 1,000 years precisely because you people of that generation had nearly exhausted its resources, then irresponsibly cast it aside, leaving it unattended for an entire millennium? Had even one of you sages been willing to return with some resources, how could the Central Plains have produced only 2 sages? And how could this war for the Central Plains have been so perilously bitter and difficult? Now, she actually has the goal to turn around and interrogate them. Many sages and the nascent soul army below also revealed expressions of barely controllable indignation.
Yuck.
Was that one remark meant to erase the devoted sacrifices of those who gave their lives for righteousness? Was it an open mockery of their iron army, forged and tempered in seas of blood? The smile finally vanished completely from the Grand Libationer's face. His tone turned grave as he warned, enunciating each word, "Great Sage Feng Kao, guard your tongue." The 9 Grand Libationers barked in unison, voices like tolling bronze bells, carrying a majesty that shook the soul. Only then did Great Sage Feng Kao realize her casually spoken words had provoked such public wrath. Yet she remained utterly indifferent, merely snorting softly and mocking in a cold tone. "If you truly had such spirit, why bow and scrape today, begging for my return to aid you?" Fang Chen stared at her icily, the fury seething in his chest no longer possible to suppress. Why invite someone like her back? Before the battle even begins, she's here wantonly crushing the morale of her own side. He suddenly raised his head and roared without a shred of hesitation, "Then please, go back to your own wellspring of myriad evils. This war for the Central Plains can go on just fine without you." After all, in Fang Chen's original plan, the 9 Hells Asura Emperor was an opponent he had intended to face alone. He possessed the primordial seed, the primordial heaven, imprisoning good, and even the great dream demon venerable to shield him. At the true moment of life and death, he might well have a chance to subjugate the 9 Hells Asura Emperor. The instant these words left his mouth, the entire venue fell into absolute, deathly silence. Everyone looked toward Fang Chen with hearts trembling in alarm, their eyes filled with shock and deep concern. Even the various sages observing from beyond the heavens were left dumbfounded by his words. A mere divine transformation cultivator actually dared to speak so to an existence standing at the very peak below the saints. Great Sage Feng Kao, hearing this, cast a condescending sidelong glance at Fang Chen, her gaze utterly devoid of ripples, as if looking down at an ant that dared defy the heavenly might. She merely tapped her foot lightly, and the space beneath her exploded. A chain containing terrifying law force instantly pierced through layers of space, lashing fiercely toward Fang Chen.
HMPH.
The 9 Grand Libationers let out a unified, heaven-shaking snort of fury, striking together to shatter that law chain into pieces in midair. Simultaneously, the great Dream Demon Venerable flashed directly in front of Fang Chen, arms folded across her chest, and let out an undisguised scoff. Such an impressive display of might. I wonder, though, if you can act half so valiantly in the wellspring of myriad evils. Only then did a trace of an unusual look finally emerge in Great Sage Feng Keo's indifferent eyes. Her casual attempt to obliterate a junior of the divine transformation realm had actually drawn 9 Grand Libationers and a demon venerable of the 3 calamities realm to intervene simultaneously. She slowly turned, gazing down haughtily at Fang Chen, and for the first time truly scrutinized him, her voice carrying a questioning tone. Are you a descendant of a great sage? Other than that, she simply could not fathom why a mere divine transformation junior would command such importance in the Central Plains. The crowd had long seethed with bottled-up rage, and the Crown Prince of the Western Sea, especially, could no longer restrain himself. He abruptly shot to Fang Chen's side, let out a heavy snort, and shouted sarcastically, "Old woman, you don't even know who he is." "Fine, then today I'll spell it out for you crystal clear.